Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara. Episode 38. Shri Mahaswami, the sage with eyes of light, the diary of a seeker of truth. Dr.Serge Demetrian. Dear devotees, now we shall listen to the second section of part 2 of this divine book under the subtitle The Lotus Pond. I went afterwards to the temple of Shiva Vishwanatha, which is 100 meters away from the mill. I found Sri Mahaswami sitting there under a tree. He was attentively listening to an assistant who was reading the commentaries of Adi Shankara on Vishnu Sahasranama and Brahma Sutra. Surely, I was not supposed to stay in the presence of Swamiji as unusual thing. An ultra-traditionalist priest approached and asked me politely to retire as the puja was about to start. A rather contradictory attitude after the message of non-duality proclaimed by the text just read, and in addition concerning someone, that is me, who had been present at tens and tens of Sri Mahaswami's offices at the Lotus Pond. I was about to get angry, but I controlled myself. Not to accede to his insistent request would have been useless, both for the traditionalist and for me. I retired without apparent murmur. This annoying interlude had slightly irritated my mind. But Swamiji pacified the reaction as an experienced horse breeder caresses a thoroughbred colt ill-treated by a lout. In the afternoon, I saw Sri Mahaswami at the Tota mansion, an ancient country house now abandoned of the local princely family. An old, large well was still there, quite deep, with steps stretching down to the water's surface. Around the well, luxuriant vegetation had invaded the area and dislodged the heavy stone slabs. Near the well, there was a small house with a single room that had been transformed into a chapel by Sri Mahaswami. A statue of the great goddess and the sandals of Adi Shankara have been installed. From time to time, the assistants come from the hermitage and perform a short puja. Sri Mahaswami, who sat near the well, was getting ready for his evening ablutions. He had disposed of the persons who were following him in such a way that I could see him twice or three times. He placed me as though he would have acted through an invisible arm exactly in front of him right from the beginning of the ablutions. He stroked me with his eyes of light. He showed me his divine feet. The tropical night fell rapidly. During the puja, after the introductory gestures, there followed the grand salutes. Keeping his hands above the head, he encircled quickly the space towards east. He vertically cut the air 2 or 3 times in front of him. My sensibility was somewhat blunted as a consequence of the nervous efforts of these last days, though I could still observe that a force seemed to extend his fingers. It was a current, a refreshing wind that passed through me, purifying me. Once the evening office finished, Sri Mahaswami stood up and headed for the exit, taking with him the compact group of visitors. I was the last to leave. Suddenly he returned, leaving on the spot behind him the frozen group as if he intended to revisit the puja's place. He passed at less of a meter from me, moving with a heavy and slow gait. I was waiting. For 2 seconds, he seemed to be 50 times taller than he would be seen with physical eyes. I perceived him as a roller spiked with thousands of pins in golden steel crumbling the earthen clod that I was. He permitted me to leave the place by about 9 p.m. After a quick dinner at the mill, I started at for the hermitage, hoping to find him there. To my surprise, I met him on the road. He was just coming from the Tota mansion and he was about to turn the angle of the alley that led to the hermitage. As an expert in the art of combining the events he wishes to conduct, he had calculated to the second and to the centimeter the moment and the point of encounter. I had the joy of following him the approximately 200 meters that led to the hermitage, and exactly behind him a place very much sought after by knowledgeable devotees. Before reaching the lotus pond, he unexpectedly stopped in front of the tree with the statues. In this case, those who follow him should be very attentive not to get carried away and touch him by their own momentum. He turned towards me with a swift movement and, pointing his hand at me, he asked twice who was there. No doubt in order to bring me nearer and to bless me with his close presence. Karveti Nagar, Thursday, 6th October 1971. The entire body, a statue of milky glass. This morning I could see Sri Mahaswami in his hut through the open door. His eyes were two little bulbs switched on in the obscurity of the room with two constant flashes of lightning in the middle of his pupils. When I was about to inform him about my program for Kanchipuram and Madras, where I wanted to go for a few days, he quickly retired in the bottom of the room behind the screen. It was clear that I did not have his permission for my planned voyage. I accepted without any reserve. Swamiji must know better than this one what is needed. I went round the hermitage by the right and found him in the small yard towards south. He squatted on the threshold and seemed very much engaged in a protracted talk with two pundits. I saw him with difficulty from across the crevices of the bamboo panels wall. He was placed in such a way that I could contemplate his left eye, which this time was black as charcoal. On its center appeared, when he looked at me, a lightning slowly flashing on and on. Sometimes he stared at me without lightning. When he was charging his look with his light, I felt swept away by a wave of Vayu. This afternoon at home, I had the very clear feeling for a few seconds that my arms and a portion of the chest on the left side had totally taken the consistence, the color, the order of Sri Mahaswami. Once again, also for a few seconds, I felt that my blood was partially mixed with his. They were neither images that I could call upon by an act of will, nor were they impressions that come and go as waves, leaving behind a taste of ashes. They were assuredly feelings, just as we could say that one's hand or an organ is mine. By evening, I arrived at the lotus pond the very moment he was meditating after his ablutions at his habitual place, the last stairs of the reservoir. I shortly plunged inward. While still on the northern side, nobody troubled me. After 15 minutes, Sri Mahaswami entered his hut. The darkness of the night had deepened. Lying on his bed, he looked across the open door, silent, effaced, almost a dwarf, an imprecise silhouette covered by a drab, creased cloth. Still, I believe that I had perceived once or twice a fine lightning, an arrow of ethereal silver piercing the middle of the deep orbits of his eyes. The visitors had left as if by an order, and we were alone. No assistant was around, with myself standing near the southern jamb, that is, the left side of the door. Suddenly, Sri Mahaswami stretched towards me, his naked right foot shining as a plate of rose-orange porcelain. His eyes, concealed until then, abruptly became immense, radiating red-orange rays. He directed on me a short pointed look. He became so powerful that for a long moment he filled the entire hut, which seemed too narrow to contain him. He briskly got down off his bed, grabbed his danda as a shaft, and walked to the door directly towards me. I was staked to the soil. It was impossible to make way for him. I saw him come, a moving statue of mute flames and odorless smoke of a superhuman force. He was the destroyer. When he neared, the wave of order that preceded him was blocked by the obstacle that I represented, and then it swooped down on me. The brilliant, ever-rising tide flooded me more and more and paralyzed me. I could hardly make a vague gesture with my head at him the moment he was near. He almost brushed me while crossing the opening of the door. He slightly bowed to pass the low door transom and again under the canopy of palm leaves. Outside, he saluted on the right and on the left side with his danda kept on the horizontal, and, ignoring me, he slowly re-entered the hut, almost to brush me once again. I hardly breathed out, fearing the angry explosion of some assistant. Sri Mahaswami willed that nothing happened. Nobody saw anything but he and I. That night, by about 10 p.m., I came to fetch water from the lake. All the assistants were asleep, scattered on the stairs of the reservoir. I squatted on the earth, very near to the hut, in order to meditate on the point where he laid his head. In the almost perfect silence, I could hear his breath, the rustling of a fine silk cloth behind the tenuous wall, a bare mat of bamboo bark. Suddenly an idea flashed and took hold of me. What if I placed my head on the opposite side to him? I made sure nobody was looking. I bowed and touched with the crown of my head exactly the point of the wall against which I felt the head of Sri Mahaswami was leaning on the other side. Nothing opposed this action, even at the precise moment when I was as if pressed against the wall. He made a vague movement, and I heard a single, deeper breath like a short sigh. I felt a change in the entire body, and my head cooled to some extent. I continued my meditation on the same place. Sri Mahaswami transformed my eyes into two fire pins. Then he united them on a single point between my eyebrows or behind them. This point stretched down like a liquid silver column that hesitatingly descended. Under its influence, the entire body became a statue of milky glass whose existence seemed to be justified by this column. The human form, my body, created by it, derived its force and its light from the central liquid silver. How did this wonder finish? I could not tell, as I did not remember anything more. Karveti Nagar, Friday, 7th October 1971. Sleepless night. After the event of yesterday evening, during the night, I did not sleep at all and was floating between slumber and a condition of subconscious happiness. The true saints probably take advantage of this sort of repose during the night, which allows them to work and pray without interruption. As to me, I came out of my bed this morning without any effort, surprisingly at ease after a night where the ordinary sleep has been totally absent. The entire morning I was entangled in household and other tasks that stopped me from going to the pond. Perhaps I should find how to surpass this lukewarm type of life to a real retreat. In the afternoon, when I went to the hermitage, Sri Mahaswami was, as per evidence, waiting for me. He came out of his hut exactly at my arrival and descended the flight of stairs up to the waters for the ablutions and the evening meditation. He took his seat on the last stair and waited until I reached my place on his right side at some 5 meters, and on the same stair he caused the departure of a person who had stood between us, and only then did he accept my prostration. I kneeled in order to be at the same level as his eyes, and I contemplated them with the hands in Anjali. He commenced concentrating without looking at me. Then only he stared at me straight in the eyes severely. His eyes were wide open, grayish blue. He opened them even wider while kindling them with fire from his interior. Then he addressed me a vague look, as if his force had left for another world. But his force returned soon, and he stared at me with another look of steel. All the time his lips murmured. After a few minutes, he got up and walked round me by my left side at an angle of 45 degrees. As he often does, he leaned his head forward and shook it in a few sweet movements of pacification, as if to say, "For today it will be enough. Be in peace." This darshan had also a diplomatic aim, to manifest publicly his interest in me, this especially to address two sanctimonious persons of his entourage who look askance at my numerous and close darshans. Devotees, we shall continue to listen to the lotus pond in the coming episode, bowing at the holy feet of the Gurus. Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara.